Imagine the scene in 399 BCE Athens. A 70-year-old philosopher named Socrates stands before a crowded, restless jury of 500 citizens. He is a man known for wandering the marketplace in bare feet and a ragged cloak, but today, the stakes are lethal. He isn't facing charges for a crime of violence, but for a crime of thought. Officially, the indictment reads, corrupting the youth and failing to honor the traditional gods of the city. As he addresses the court, Socrates refuses to follow the script. He won't beg for his life or use the tearful emotional pleas common in Athenian trials. Instead, he utters a phrase that has echoed through 2.5 millennia. The unexamined life is not worth living. This wasn't a casual remark or a bit of courtroom flair. It was his ultimate defense. He was declaring that his relentless questioning wasn't a public nuisance, but a divine service to the city itself. Socrates faced a stark, literal choice. He could embrace silence to save his skin, or maintain his inquiry and face death. To him, an existence without self-reflection was a form of spiritual bankruptcy. He chose the hemlock, proving that for some, the search for truth is more vital than breath itself.
To really grasp what Socrates meant by the examined life, we need to look at the specific Greek context of the word examine, or exatastis. This wasn't just casual reflection or keeping a diary. In the Socratic sense, it was a rigorous, often painful process of cross-examination. Socrates believed that most people live in a state of sleepwalking. We follow the customs, traditions, and prejudices of our society without ever stopping to ask why. He argued that the unique human capacity is reason. To ignore that capacity is to live a life that is fundamentally less than human. Think about it. A life spent merely pursuing biological needs, eating, sleeping, and seeking physical comfort, is an existence shared by cattle. It lacks the specific dignity of a human being. This is why the Socratic method matters. The examination is the dividing line. It is what transforms a life of mere reaction into a life of intention. Without it, you aren't the pilot of your own existence. You're just a passenger on a ship steered by someone else's ideas. It is the difference between surviving and truly thriving.
Socrates didn't lecture from a podium. He took his philosophy to the dusty streets and crowded marketplaces of Athens. His primary tool was the Socratic method. He would approach the city's elites, the generals, the poets, and the politicians, asking deceptively simple questions. What is courage? Or what is justice? Or what is piety? As he peeled back the layers of their assumptions through persistent follow-up questions, the flaws in their logic and the contradictions in their beliefs were inevitably laid bare. This process was rarely comfortable. It was designed to bring the person to a state of aporia, a clearing of the mind where they realize they do not know what they thought they knew. This state of intellectual vertigo was what Socrates called learned ignorance. He believed this was the essential first step toward wisdom because, quite simply, you cannot learn what you think you already know. By dismantling these false certainties, Socrates forced his fellow citizens to face the vacuum of their own understanding, creating the only space where genuine truth could finally begin to take root.
At the heart of Socrates' philosophy is a radical shift in how we view our existence, the care of the psyche, or the soul. Before Socrates, the ancient Greek concept of the soul was often just a ghostly shadow of the body. He revolutionized this, arguing that the soul is the seat of our intelligence and moral character. It is our true self, while the body is merely its instrument. Think of it this way. If your body is a ship, your soul is the captain. To Socrates, the unexamined life is a life of profound self-neglect. We often spend our best years chasing wealth, obsessing over fame, or perfecting our physical appearance. In doing so, we are effectively starving our true selves. He argued that the only real harm a person can suffer isn't poverty or even death. It's moral harm. This occurs when we act unjustly or live in ignorance. By examining our lives daily, we are performing a kind of essential medicine for the soul. This process helps us identify the vices that lead to internal misery and cultivate the virtues that lead to true flourishing. It's the ultimate act of self-care.
Socrates wasn't just a philosopher, he was a problem, a dangerous one. Picture Athens in the wake of the devastating Peloponnesian War. The city was fragile, reeling from political upheaval and desperate for a return to tradition and stability. In this climate, conformity was the highest virtue. But then you have Socrates, who famously called himself a gadfly, a biting insect sent to sting the sluggish horse of the state into action. He didn't care about the comfort of the status quo. He insisted that every individual must prioritize their own moral compass over the laws of the city-state. Think about how radical that is. He was arguing that your internal sense of truth, your private conscience, should be the ultimate authority rather than the decree of the majority. To the Athenian establishment, this wasn't just annoying, it was a direct threat to their survival. Socrates lived at the perilous intersection of private integrity and public duty. He showed us that the examined life isn't a passive pursuit. It requires a rare and immense courage to stand alone. He refused to let the powerful dictate his internal truth, proving that the search for wisdom often comes at a steep price. Socrates dropped a bombshell on the streets of Athens when he claimed that virtue is knowledge. At first glance, that might sound like a dry academic formula, but it is actually a radical psychological insight. He believed that no human being truly desires what is harmful to themselves. Think about that for a second. When we lie or act out in anger, Socrates argues we aren't choosing evil for evil's sake. Instead, we have made a cognitive error. We are mistaken about what will actually lead to our own flourishing or eudaimonia. In this view, every moral failure is really a failure of understanding. This is why the examined life is an absolute ethical necessity, not just a hobby for intellectuals. Every time we pause to question our biases or look beneath the surface of our impulses, we aren't just thinking, we are actively becoming more virtuous. We are scrubbing away the ignorance that causes suffering for ourselves and our community. By examining our lives daily, we engage in the most practical work possible, ensuring our actions actually align with the good. It is about moving from being a passenger of your instincts to being the pilot of your soul.
The trial reaches its absolute climax during the penalty phase. Having been found guilty, Socrates is invited to suggest his own punishment. This was his chance to save himself. He could have requested exile or simply promised to stop teaching and slip into a quiet, comfortable retirement. But Socrates refused to compromise. He argued that abandoning his philosophical inquiry would be a betrayal of the divine mission he'd been assigned. He looked his accusers in the eye and declared that even if they offered him his life on the condition of silence, he would reject it. Ultimately, he chose to drink the hemlock, the lethal poison, rather than live a life where his mind was shackled. It's a staggering moment in history. In choosing death over silence, he made a final, powerful statement that the integrity of our principles and the freedom to question are infinitely more valuable than biological survival itself. He taught us that a life lived in fear of the truth is a life already lost. Socrates didn't just die for his ideas, he lived for them until the very last drop.
Today, the call to live an examined life feels more like a radical act of rebellion than a philosophical suggestion. We are submerged in a digital deluge, an age of constant distraction where echo chambers and sophisticated algorithms often do our heavy lifting. They curate our world, reinforcing our existing biases rather than challenging them to grow. Socrates' ancient message serves as a timeless, urgent invitation to pause. It's a call to step away from the relentless noise of the crowd and honestly ask, what do I truly believe? And more importantly, why do I believe it? This isn't just about intellectual curiosity, it's about reclaiming your soul. It reminds us that our fundamental worth isn't calculated by our productivity, our social status, or the pile of possessions we accumulate. Instead, it's measured by the clarity of our consciousness and the raw integrity of our choices. To live the examined life is to take absolute ownership of your existence. It is the conscious decision to ensure your life becomes a deliberate work of art, rather than a chaotic series of accidental events. Ultimately, this is the only path to a life that isn't just lived, but is truly worth living.